What's up everybody, and welcome to a new video. And in this video we're gonna go over my notes for some coding basics in Python. And here the first note is about how I define coding. So to me that's simply giving the computer text-based instructions in order to accomplish a task. And then Python is simply a coding or programming language for doing exactly that. So for example, some tasks that you can do with Python are data science, web development, or automation and scripting. And actually you most likely won't do those things just using pure Python alone, but instead you're going to use so-called modules or packages. So for example, to do data science you could use pandas, matplotlib, or scikit-learn. To do web development you could use Flask or Django. And to do automation or scripting, you could use OS, pathlib, or sys. And you can think of those modules and packages here simply as being software. So for example, just like you would use a music editor software to create songs, or a video editor software to create movies. And then the way that you interact with those modules and packages is by typing Python code. So just like you would interact with a music editor or video editor by using the GUI, so the graphical user interface. And you might take it for granted now, but at some point you had to learn how to use the GUI so that you were then actually able to learn, for example, about the music editor software to create songs. And the same thing applies to Python. So first you have to learn about the basic Python syntax. So this is what this tutorial series is about. And then you are prepared to learn, for example, about pandas if you want to do some data science. Okay, so this is how I define coding and how Python fits into that. So this is the first note. And then the second note is about some general guidelines for writing code. So the first one is to use descriptive names for variables, functions, or classes. And here I have prepared a code example that doesn't follow this guideline. So here we set a equal to a list containing 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then x we set to 0, and then we loop over a. So for I in a, we say x equals x plus I. Then we have here y equals the length of a, and then lastly z equals x divided by y. So if I run this code here, then you can see that z is 2.5. And as you can see here, for this example, you are not using any descriptive names. So therefore, it makes it somewhat hard to understand what's going on. And you have to actually go through each line to understand what this code is doing. And then here I have prepared the same code, but in this case, I used descriptive names. So for example, here then we have list of numbers. Then total equals 0, and then for number in the list of numbers, we're going to say total equals total plus number. And then here we set, or we determine n elements by saying we want the length of the list of numbers. And then lastly, we calculate the mean by dividing the total by the n elements. And now if I run this, we can also see that here we have a mean of 2.5. And I think here it's pretty clear to see that those descriptive names here make it much easier to understand what is going on in this code. And actually, you wouldn't even need to go through each line here. You just could look at this first variable here, which says list of numbers. And then here at the end, you have a mean. So what this code is doing is probably calculating the mean of this list of numbers. So this is why you should use descriptive names for variables, functions, or classes. So then the next guideline is to avoid repetitive code. And to show that, I've again prepared some code. So let me copy this here. And then let's run this. And then let's delete this cell here. So here what we do is we calculate mean 1. And mean 1 is simply the mean of list of numbers 1. So if I print that out, we can see that's 2.5. And here then we're gonna calculate mean 2. Which is the mean of the second list here, and this one is 25. And here, as you can see, this block of code here is essentially the same as this one. The only difference is that here we use list of numbers 1, whereas here we use list of numbers 2. And anytime you have a repetitive code like this here, this could be then an indication that you should restructure or refactor your code. So here what we could do is we could put this code here into a function and then simply call this function on those both two list of numbers. So let's do that. Therefore indent that here. And then here, let's create a function and let's call this calculate mean. And here the parameter is gonna be a list of numbers. And then here, let's simply delete this _1. And then at the end, we're simply gonna return the mean for this function. So then let's call this function here for our two lists of numbers. So let's say here mean _1 equals calculate mean of the list of numbers 1. And then let's copy this here. And then here, let's call it on list of numbers 2. So now let's run this. And now if you calculate, if we print out the mean 1 and 2 again, you can see that we again have 2.5 and 25. So this is an example that demonstrates why you should avoid repetitive code. So then the last guideline states that coding is an iterative process. So first, you just try to make the code work. Then if it's working, then you can think about how to make it readable, i.e. finding descriptive names or restructuring or refactoring your code. And then if it's working and if it's readable, but if it's too slow for the given purpose, then you can think about how to make it faster. And in my opinion, this last step here is most of the time not as relevant, especially for beginners, because the optimization of algorithms, for example, is mostly taken care of in modules or packages. So those are my general guidelines for writing code. And here I also have a side note, which is about the Zen of Python. So if you want to see that, then you simply need to run the code, import this. And then here you can see the Zen of Python, which again are some guidelines for writing good Python code. Okay, so now with that, we have covered all the notes for my coding basics. So then in the next video, we're going to go over my notes for the variables in Python. So thanks for watching and hopefully I will see you in the next video.